Welcome to the Gold Standard here from the 440 Sports Network, and of course presented by lowerbroadhockey.com. My name is Braden Gall, and you can find me back on Blue Sky at Braden Gall.
I'm Emma Lingan, and I am not on Blue Sky yet, but you can find me on the hellscape that is Twitter at Emma_Lingan.
See, that is why we're on Blue Sky together. Come on over, Preds fans. The water is warm. The skies are nice and shining over there. It feels a lot like 2012 Twitter. It's quite nice, actually. I got on there like last year, and there was nobody there, and they've gained millions of followers and accounts in the last week. I can't imagine why.
Yeah.
So come on over to Blue Sky, Blueski, and soon enough, Emma will be skeeting away over there on Blueski. So come on over and hang out. And Michael's actually here. I just want everyone to know. Ben says no Michael in the comment section. By the way, please jump into the comment section if you'd like to be a part of the show. We'd love to have you. Questions, comments, any of the chat from Lower Broad Hockey, of course, will always be incorporated into the show as well. And Michael's actually here. We're just not letting him be on the show today. He's off camera. He's just having to listen to everything we have to say. We're not going to let him talk.
Braden clearly doesn't like letting Michael talk. We learned that a couple shows ago. So
no, he's under the weather, not feeling good. So send him like, what do you think would bother him the most on Twitter? Like, what if he got a bunch of tweets about like Ozzy Weisblatt? Like, I don't know what would make him really annoyed.
Everyone go tell Michael what a great coach John Hines is right now. He would love that.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. Yes, talk about how terrible boneless wings are. Just tweet him pictures of chicken wings. Oh, that's so good. You guys are great. Josh, Ben, James, all of you. Good to see you in the comment section. Please share the product on Twitter or Facebook. Can't live stream on Blue Ski yet, so we'll see. So there you go, Michael Gallagher. There's the comments, the audacity. There you go, Mike. Good to see you. I hope you're feeling better, man. And I do have some comments from him about the Dante Fabbro saga, which, of course, we will get to because we can discuss the actual merits, Emma, of the decision-making around Dante Fabbro. But I think there's an interesting conversation that Adam and I had a little bit of on Monday on the Extra, of course, that you can only get when you are a subscriber to Lower Broad Hockey. And that is about sort of his career. Over 300 games, it seems to be very indicative of the struggles that this organization has had in the draft. It's the case of the almosts, like a lot of decent players that are almost good, and that feels like the problem. So we'll get into that. A mind-numbingly, obnoxiously stupid decision by a media company that matters to Preds fans, potentially Hall of Fame, of course. Congratulations to David Poile and to Shea Weber. And really the big question we're going to start with is, has this team actually level set? Has it turned a corner and become who it's going to be? That's going to be an important question following what is, since the last time we talked, Emma, not a great week of hockey. They lose to Washington, they lose to Florida. Scott Wedgwood, excellent against Florida. Utah win, and then the overtime loss where they did play a good game against Colorado. So we'll get to all that. Sinkers, Beverages, Emma, and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue paired together to make your Thanksgiving easy. What are you doing for Thanksgiving, by the way?
I think I'm going to be doing a Friendsgiving. I'm staying in town, and friends and I are going to get together. Probably might be hitting up Sinkers Beverages because we plan to imbibe a lot.
As is tradition,
Yes.
as one does. But look, here's the thing. Make it a Shotgun Willie's Barbecue Thanksgiving, Emma. It's super easy. It's super easy. Bring a little of that Lone Star State to your Thanksgiving table this holiday season. Look at that. I read the copy right off the screen. It's the best ad read we'll do all year. Look, it's very you got a bunch of friends. I'm doing this for my family. We got my parents coming in. We got in-laws coming in. Like, if you want to take the stress out of it, just Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. It's SWG BBQ. Wait, SGW BBQ. God, why do they? We got to talk to Pitmaster Bill about why he put the extra letter in the acronym, but we'll save that for another time. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Order a Thanksgiving meal right there. Look, here's what it looks like. I showed you guys last week. Look at that. Look at that. Black Hawk Farm smoked brisket, smoked turkey. You got Mr. Tony's Magic Green Beans. You got mashed potatoes, turnip greens, jalapeno cheddar cornbread, pumpkin pie, the whole deal. You can get it all there. You can order it and then just pick it up on Wednesday, Emma. And then your whole entire Friendsgiving is served. And you are the hero because you just clicked a button on the internet.
I like that.
Sinker's Beverages also, they've got all the pairings and stuff set for you guys. So if you want to pop over to Sinker's Beverages after you order your meal from Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, they have all the right pairings ready to go that will fit perfectly with your Thanksgiving meal, as if anyone knows that those wines go well with smoked meat. I don't know. Here's the other thing about Sinker's Beverages. I want to show you guys something real fast. If you're watching on YouTube or Twitter, check that out. That is the Southern Collective Spirit Company, which is right there in downtown. I think they actually have a bag chucker. I think they actually have a bag chucker barrel pick where I think Hal and Chris went and picked a barrel. But with Sinker's, we didn't get to hang out with Hal and Chris when we did this. But Sinker's Beverages, this is what they do. When you sign up for the in-crowd, if you are a bourbon drinker, for example, and you buy their bourbons, they will say, hey, do you want to go do a barrel pick with us? Which is one of the coolest things you get to do. You get to drink bourbon all afternoon, all night for like free, and taste which one becomes the barrel pick. So they emailed me and they say, hey, do you want to be a part of this? And I don't like a lot of ryes, but we go to Southern Collective, which is right there downtown. We try about 8 of them. We pick this rye. It ends up, we pick the color of the top, and it ends up in the store. I go pick it up. They tell me it's available. And because I was an in-crowd member, I got to go be a part of the barrel pick process, which is one of the coolest things you'll ever get to do. I swear, if you ever get a chance to do it, go. Sinker's Beverages will take you if you are a loyal subscriber or loyal purchaser of booze. Is the right shopper, customer? What's the right word?
Drinker?
Something like that. Drinker, yeah. You could look. I buy these to collect them now. These are like my adult like trading cards. Like that's what this is. I just have them in a shelf up in the kitchen, much to my wife's enjoyment. Okay. Has this team turned a corner broadly is my question. I'd like you to start, and you can kind of explore the space and tell me what you want to, which direction you want to take this, because they're 5-4-2. Not a great week of hockey this past week. They did play well against Utah, 2 power play goals. They played very well against Colorado for the most part. Big mistake in overtime by Shea, of course, after a very good game. But the 0-5 start, if you remove it, I'm not saying you can, but take it away. They are slightly above 500. They've level set to some degree. Is this the team they're going to be? Have they officially washed that beginning first 5 games out? They still have plenty to do, but I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you talk about turning a corner or level setting, that's something that no matter what is not going to happen overnight. You're not going to start 0-5 and then immediately just start winning and looking dominant every game. That doesn't happen. So I think you have to look at it as kind of a gradual process. And I do think that this team has turned a corner. I will say, regarding the losses of the last week, I don't think all losses are created equal. I understand, obviously, people are not in the mood and don't want to hear about moral victories or, oh, but they played really well, they just didn't get the points. I understand we want points right now. I do too. I get it. But again, back to the point of this does not happen overnight. You have to crawl before you can walk, before you can run. I think looking at these last few losses, really the only loss that I was really, really disappointed about and like just thought was an abysmal loss was the Florida game. I thought the Nashville played exceptionally well against Washington. I thought that they played well against Colorado. Obviously, the end was very unfortunate and just a very unlucky bounce at the time that you do not want to be having unlucky bounces, but they do happen. And then obviously the win over Utah was really impressive. But yeah, I think as far as effort, because what we were seeing in those first 5 games, it was like the effort was just not there. And then these last several games, you started to see, okay, the effort is there. Maybe not getting the results, but we're starting to see this team clicking in a way that they weren't in the first 5 games.
I actually agree. And if you look at sort of the other teams around the league, like Tampa Bay, I think right now is 7-6-1. That's about where the Preds have played the last 11 games. Again, 5-4-2, slightly above 500. There's some good games, there's some bad games, but again, slightly above 500. And And yes, James, good to see you. Welcome to the show. He says, I feel like they really started to turn a corner against Washington despite the loss. I kind of agree with that. I think that's kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I think that, that is a really, really dangerous Washington team, and they were able to limit their chances pretty well. And they were able to, they were able to hang with those guys really well. And I think that, that's what you want to see. And then again, like I said, step back against Florida for sure. But then they come back, they respond with that 4-0 shutout of Utah. And then again, even against Colorado, they were able to come out for the second game in a row, score the first goal. And then, they saw what happened that.
Nice change for them.
Yeah. Yeah. That Colorado team it's very opportunistic. And if you give them an inch, they will take a mile. And they saw the result of that early in the second period against Colorado. And that obviously is something you want to work on. They clearly let their foot off the gas for a few minutes there, and that's all that Colorado needed to not only tie it but take the lead. And then if you look,
their possession in the zone 5-on-5 is absurd.
Yes.
Colorado, like their ability to keep the puck, and like when they get you on your heels and you're tired, which I think is what happened in that second period. Like they can just work you, man. It's wild.
And especially with the Nashville Predators have been having, if you want to look at positives, their special teams have really been a strength for this team in the early going here. And that Colorado game, there were not a lot of penalties. So it was a lot of 5-on-5. And so even then, the Preds were able to hang with them. Again, they saw the consequences of letting their foot off the gas and playing on their heels early in the second period. Colorado came back, tied it, went ahead. But then in the third, Nashville was able to kind of come back and they were able to tie it, send it to overtime, get that crucial point. I know that you want 2 points, of course. And I mean, more specifically, you don't want those 2 points to go to a division rival. But I think that it was still, a sign of, if that exact game happened in the first 5 games of the season, I would have had zero hope or faith that Nashville would have been able to come back and tie it. So
yeah, it's all right. This is where we are, unfortunately, and we need to get out of this place. But this is what progress looks like. It's terrible, and then there's things that you point to that you say, all right, that's a positive. Scoring first is a positive. Being on the road against a very talented team and kind of hanging with them is a positive. Coming back from a deficit, that's positive. Again, I thought Brady Shea played his best game maybe of the year. And then he just, I don't know, like, does he need to get his skates checked or something? Like, it seems like all of his mistakes in this first little chunk of his career in Nashville have come because he's skating too fast, trying to do too much, making a mistake on his feet, which is very odd because he's a very good skater. So I think that comes around. What's interesting is the free agent group in general. If you're looking at the 4 big names, Jonathan Marchessault has been probably the most consistent from start to finish. I just love his energy. Like I think they need a legit second line center to maximize Gus Nyquist and Jonathan Marchessault's abilities. But I think he just brings so much energy, and I think he's going to be a great fit in Brunette's system once it all kind of comes together. Stamkos, you're starting to see some life 5-on-5, still going to be a power play machine for them. And on the top line, I think he is better suited because he's just such an elite weapon across from Forsberg that I think it creates a lot of problems for defenses. He's coming around and, has elevated his game lately. Shea would have been number 3 in that group in terms of performance so far, played a good game. And then like the mistake, of course, just trying to wheel in the own zone around your own blue line like that and just giving the puck away, of course, to a former Pred. And then Scott Wedgwood, to your point on about the Florida match. Here's what's interesting. That's 3 games for Wedgwood, 4.37, 841 save percentage, 13 goals allowed. Not good. The problem is the look right now, like Shea with the mistake to end the game after the start to the season, Wedgwood against Florida. It's just bad optics. Like the two of them playing poorly in that situation and then making a mistake. It's just bad optics right now for the free agent class, which has left a lot to be desired, frankly.
Yeah, it's bad optics in the early going here. I don't think you're saying this, but just to reiterate, I Scott Wedgwood was not the only issue, not even the biggest issue against Florida. But I think that again,
he was the main issue against Dallas. That's for sure. The season opener. So
yeah.
probably.
He was one of them. Yes. But I think, he was not the reason. Like, Nashville would have lost that the way that the guys played in front of them. They would have lost that Florida game, even if Saros was in net. So I think that was, like you said, optics are bad. Shea, it's so unfortunate because he actually looked so good that whole game. But all people are going to remember is that mistake that he made at the end. And it's a rough mistake. And you know what? I called it an unlucky bounce earlier. And that's what it is. I mean, it's unlucky when you make mistakes at the worst possible time. But we've all done it. And every guy, like every NHL player has done it.
Speak for yourself. I've never made a mistake.
Yeah, I've actually never done anything wrong ever. So,
oh shit, Michael's been waiting in the side this entire time. I forgot to bring him onto the show.
No, I think that it's hard because it's kind of that, to put it in hockey terms, we talk about, guys like when they feel the pressure, they're gripping the stick a little bit too hard, and they're maybe feeling that pressure, and they're trying too hard. And so you don't want to say, well, just don't try, because that's horrible advice. But it's
what Burnett's talking about with frustration. When you think you're working harder than and you're really not, it's that you're actually causing problems because you're overdoing it. Right.
And that's honestly kind of how I see Shea's first chunk of the season here.
I agree.
That is what I'm seeing, only because I did have the opportunity to watch him closely for 3 years in Carolina. And so I know what he's capable of. I know how he's capable of playing, so seeing him now, it's like that, but it gives me faith that he will figure it out. And again, I've been preaching this from the beginning of the season, from this 0-5 start. I think this team will figure it out, but I don't think that that's going to happen overnight. It's going to be a gradual process. And again, Shea specifically comes from a system in Carolina that's very, very different defensively from the one in Nashville. So it doesn't mean that he's not capable of playing the way that, playing the kind of zone defense and the very aggressive style of defense that Andrew Brunette wants him to play. He's just so used to playing the Rod Brindamore man-to-man defense, which is a little bit more self-explanatory. And now he's having to basically retrain his brain and say, just like, okay, now I'm not just defending. Now my way of defending is to actually skate and run these guys around and get the puck back, which he's capable of doing. It's just going to take him a little bit.
I did get a notice in my email notifications from the team. I guess maybe it's not been announced yet, but Adam Wilsby has been called up by the Predators. I think Doherty reported it on that other app that other people are on. What I find interesting, we can talk about that in just a second. I talked to Shea about that at the very beginning of the year. Like, that was one of the things you guys were asking for, is like, hey, what is the exact what makes this system interesting and difficult and tricky? And I think you were there, and I was talking to Hal about it. And then we get into the locker room, and I got about 2 minutes with Shea, and he basically said the same. He's like, it's just so different. And so I agree. It was he's definitely pressing to sort of pick it up. And it's one of those where this is going to be a weird analogy, so go with me on this. Like, teaching my daughter, both of them, they play different sports. My oldest plays softball, my youngest plays soccer, and teaching them to like hurry up and do things slow, right, is a really tough thing to teach young kids. Like, my daughter plays shortstop, she plays third base, so you have to teach them to like hurry up to get to the ball. But then if they go too fast when they try to pick it up and throw to first, they're going to make a mistake. So they've got to hurry up to get there, and then sort of like with pace and intentionality, take your time, but hurry. So you have to like be sure of fielding the ball and be sure you've got a good grip and all that stuff. Same thing with my youngest on the soccer field, which is like, you got to get to the ball, hurry up, but then you have to be careful with the ball when you've got it so that you don't make mistakes and you can actually maneuver. And that's basically what Shea was saying. He's like, you could see it from a lot of the guys. I think Marcia Show is the one who kind of picked it up fastest, obviously. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I do agree. It's just really a bad look to have the start to the season he's had in the system, and then to play a great game on the road and then make the mistake to a former Pred that cost the game. It's just unfortunate the way it happened. So we shall see. I do think here's the thing. They're 5-4-2. They do need to be better than that. Like, you're going to have to be better than 5-4-2 over 10 game stretches. You have to be better than 500. So that's going to have to be the next step in the progression. The next step in the progression is to be, I don't know, like, 6-3-1, or something like that over the next 10. But they still have to also have the hot streak that gets them out of the 5-game slump to start the year. So they're going to have another hot streak in there somewhere to sort of counterbalance the bad stuff. So that's the next two steps in the progression. If we're going to believe in the turning of the corner and the level setting, the next step is a couple of good stretches of like 2-3 games over 500 and then one really great hot streak. And that gets them back into the mix. And so we'll see if that happens. We shall see if that happens. Okay. Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, two great and amazing local sponsors in Nashville, award-winning by the scene and by you, the voters. So make sure you go support good local businesses. Somebody, great food writer and diehard Preds fan, season ticket holder, and subscriber to Lower Broad Hockey, Chris Chamberlain of the Nashville scene. Fantastic food writer, one of the best food critics in the city. He texted me last night, and he was like, hey, why is it called Sinkers? And I was like, well, good question. Adam Sinks is the owner. Shout out. Big Preds fan, huge Preds fan, big local guy here in town. I believe I should know if he's had the new baby or not. Or not him, but the family. But his last name it's Adam Sinks, and so Sinks is the family name. That is where it comes from. So Sinkers is an unusual name for a liquor store, but it's because it comes from the last name. And they've been serving the community for almost 40 years. I think they got a big celebration coming up next year. So make sure you check out Sinkers Beverages. Join the in crowd and search Uber Eats. Sinkers Beverages, have that booze delivered directly to your house. I got an Uber question for you here. This is a totally different story. I wasn't planning on bringing this up, but my wife gave me a bunch of shit about this last night. So we went to Leon Bridges at the Ryman last night. Love Leon Bridges. She loves Leon Bridges. His voice was totally out of whack. I think he might have been sick. Very unfortunate to spend that kind of money to go to a Ryman show to see one of your favorite artists and like not get the vocals that you're paying for. Big bummer. Hope it was what it was. So she was in a kind of a crusty mood when we left on a school night, a little late for her taste on a Tuesday. So speaking of Uber, I would never get an Uber on Broadway, like ever. So we walk out of the Ryman and I'm always like, let's just walk up a couple blocks, like closer to T-Pack up there by where Live on the Green is, that the plaza up there. We live in East, so you can take a straight shot over the bridge. It's about an 8-minute walk. And I'm like, all right, it takes about 10 minutes to wait for an Uber, but I do not want to sit on Broadway. So we walk up there and I call the Uber and she's getting frustrated. She's very angry that we're like, what's going on? Why did we do this? Why did we come up here? What's going on? Blah, blah. I'm like, it's late. You didn't get what you wanted out of Leon. Okay. Don't take it out on me. Isn't it smarter to walk out of the fray, save yourself a couple bucks on the Uber and not have to sit in traffic on Broadway? Isn't that always the smart strategy? Like, even if you have to wait a couple of extra minutes for the Uber? I don't understand.
Yes, I would agree.
Solve my marital problems, Emma.
I was going to say, I don't want to say anything decisive and, until I've heard both sides of the story, but
she's not a listener of the show.
Okay. Well, I just objectively, I agree. You get away from Broadway to get the Uber.
Yes.
Even if it's just a block or two, like it's because otherwise it's just chaotic. It's just chaotic.
Emma says I was right.
You said she's not a listener of the show. You can't do that. No, I agree.
Ben, why is Braden's wife always catching strays on this show? I don't think that's true. She's like the greatest woman on the planet. Sorry, Emma, but I got nothing. The greatest woman on the planet's wrong every now and then. Josh says absolutely the right move. Walk a couple of blocks to get out of the surge pricing, and it's easier route for the car. Yes, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah,
it was like I saved $3 and the car like got right over the bridge, and we didn't have to wait for any traffic at all. It was wonderful. It was wonderful.
As someone who grew up in a big city, thank you, Kevin. I agree.
Kevin says Emma continues to drop massive wisdom. That's 2 weeks in a row. Kevin has sucked up to you, Emma, and I don't appreciate it, Kevin.
I do. I'm here for the pandering. But
Flattery will get you everywhere.
as someone who grew up in a city with just constant gridlock traffic, there are a few things in this life that I hate more than sitting in said traffic, and that's Broadway all the time. So it's like, if I can avoid, I'll walk a mile if I can avoid sitting in that.
You could, like, you walk a mile, you're almost home, Emma.
And I have done that before. So
yes, I have. Shout out. I've got a good friend, Doug, friend of the pod, who lives up there in German, season ticket holder, always Germantown, always walks home from Preds games because of that exact thing. So
I'll be honest, like, I just, on principle, I can't bring myself to pay the surge pricing to go less than a mile. And because I think it's 0.9 miles to my house.
Is it really?
And, yeah, I think it is uphill.
And then back down.
Yes, but there's also like a little bit of an area. It's a walk that I do not recommend that women especially, take alone. And the one time I did it alone, I was pretty fearful the entire time. But
after a game, if you've done locker rooms and it's like 12, if it's like midnight on a Tuesday, I hear what you're saying.
But I've done it. I went to a concert at Bridgestone last month, and my friend and I, we live in different buildings, but we both live in Germantown, so we did the walk back together. And it's like, if you're doing it with someone, it was like, okay, not bad.
What show, dare I ask?
Charlie XCX. Brat Summer, never ends.
That's right. The only thing I knew about that was her like, I'm gonna party through it. That's all I know. Josh says, plus also you're much less likely to be hit with a chair. Also true.
That.
And Ben continuing to quote old music. I like it. I appreciate it. All right, so there you go. That was our side here. That was our personality segment for the show. All right, so Dante Fabbro, and here's what I'll read to get this started, because I'll read Michael's comments here, because we're not allowing him to talk. He's off screen, so
he can't speak.
Yeah, he's not allowed to speak. He has to listen to the entire thing, though. So he basically, his take: really stupid move, and the fans have every right to hold it against Barry Trotz as long as they want. Now, he's not here to defend that, because I don't necessarily disagree all the way. I mean, I don't necessarily agree all the way. But if you give me, so there's two conversations here. There's one about the Preds' struggles to find good players, elite players, in the first two rounds of the draft. I call it like the case of the almost. Like, Dante Fabbro was almost a good draft pick. He was almost a good defenseman. It almost worked out here. He was almost worth all of the things that happened, and it just never hit. We can debate. So that's one discussion, is like the draft history. The first discussion is kind of what Michael says, which is, where did this go wrong from a management standpoint of the situation? If you are David Poile, should he have been traded? Should he have not been re-signed? Barry Trotz is involved in some of that. Could he have been traded last offseason? Could he have been traded now? I have some thoughts. Adam and I talked about it a little bit on the extra, but I want to start with you just from the decision to put him on waivers. I guess their assumption was, and even some of the reporting around it was, they thought for sure he would make it through because of his $2.5 million cap hit. That did not happen. He goes to Columbus. Just your thoughts in general on the decision to waive him.
I mean, my initial reaction, I try to reserve judgment until I see, because none of these things happen in a vacuum. You know, there's always kind of a ripple effect or a domino effect of these decisions. But my immediate reaction is, I don't like the decision. I think, I think two things can be true. I think Dante Fabbro, it was clear that he was not going to be part of the long-term plan for this team. And he probably needed a change of scenery and could really benefit from that. I think that's all true. I think he's such a valuable player, and I think he was undervalued a lot on this team. And, you know, I'm not saying he's going to go out and win any Norris trophies anytime soon, but I think that he is a very reliable defender, kind of the way we talk about Colton Sissons. It's like you can put him anywhere and you know what you're going to get from him. Dante Fabbro, kind of like the Colton Sissons of the defense. I feel like he's an underrated guy. He's not putting up any flashy numbers, but he is reliable. You can depend on him. And he played really well on that top pairing with Roman Josi. But what was interesting about it is, like, and you don't see this a lot around the league, but Dante Fabbro, he was either in the lineup playing on the top pairing with perennial Norris finalist Roman Josi, or he didn't play at all. He was a healthy scratch. And that was always a little bit odd to me because, again, my feelings, yes, Luke Shen is going to catch strays in this conversation because it's relevant. My feeling is that, I mean, we all know Dante Fabbro should be in the lineup every night over Luke Shen. I still think that. But I'm also not naive enough to think that the Predators were ever going to waive Luke Shen or bench him even, because it's just I know how this organization feels about him. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. So that being said, knowing that they weren't going to do anything with Shen, that did kind of leave Fabbro as the odd man out. Fine. But given the value that he has, given his body of work, and given his history as, you know, a former first round pick, I think that he's a guy that you can't let go for nothing. I understand that it's a trade right now, this early in the season, was not going to be feasible. No one's really trading right now. I think if anything, like I would say, you know, you could wait until this year's deadline to trade him, but I think that the writing has been on the wall here for a while. I think you should have tried to trade him last year. Because he, you know, even after signing that 1-year contract, I think that it's just like they should have tried to trade him. Should have tried to trade him last year because he still has value. And you know what? Maybe, I mean,
I think they did. I think they didn't take the quote unquote bad offer because it probably would have looked bad.
Right. That's fair. I know
but would it have looked worse than this? Probably not.
I know that Barry has dangled Trotz, or has buried Fabbro. Like, I don't know. It's just like he's buried him in the lineup, or buried him like on the bench, or put him in this top spot.
That's not Trotz though. That's not on Trotz.
Well, that's Brunette. That's Brunette. But then Trotz, as a result, I guess, or maybe, I don't know, chicken and egg. I don't know, you know, what the causation is here. But then Trotz goes and dangles him out on the trade market. He has been ever since he took over. And again, like you said, we don't know what the offers were. But again, I'm with you. Whatever the offer was, I don't think would look worse than this.
All right, a lot of stuff there. I pretty much agree with most everything you said. James says Barry Trotz talks a lot about fit, like not playing a top 6 prospect in the bottom 6, for example. Do you think this could have been a situation like that? I think this is ultimately the question, because Ben kind of reiterates what you said as well, which is I'm just confused. Let me put it up there. I'm just confused how Fabbro, a routine top pair D-man, drops so far out of favor with the team. I think ultimately that's the most impossible question to answer until somebody gets Brunette in the offseason and you're just like, can you explain what he wasn't doing and why it didn't fit in your system, just so we have some insight. I'm not asking you to like drag this guy's name through the mud, but just tell us what he wasn't doing that made him be either Roman Josi's partner or a scratch for most of the season. And I think that's just confusing. That's just a confusing place for a player to be. Kevin and Josh both talking about sort of recalibrating on who they think can get through waivers. Look, you have to put Eeli Tolvanen or to put Dante Fabbro on waivers, you have to understand the dynamics, which they do. And so you have to assume that there's a chance you lose the player for nothing. And then you got to deal with the fallout of this. I actually don't think, and Adam pointed this out on Monday, if you look at Tolvanen and Fabbro and those stories, I actually think the fan outrage over losing them on waivers drastically it's not directly, it doesn't correlate with the value of the player. in my opinion. Like, there's a lot of outrage about Tolvanen at the time. He then had a good season and has regressed to like just a guy. He's a regular, just kind of player. Fabbro has been sort of a player for his entire career, which we can discuss is the problem. But they're not, Tolvanen and Fabbro are not making this team better today. They're not. And so I don't think, I think the outrage over the optics of losing two pieces that used to be very valuable first round picks for quote unquote nothing is, I just think it looks way worse than it actually is for the franchise. And I think that's okay, because here's ultimately my takeaway on all of this, which is, and I've had some time, a little bit more time to think about it. Adam and I recorded Sunday night. It was pretty fresh that he had been claimed by Columbus. My thought is that any one decision that Trotz has made on this is not a big deal, and I don't have any problems with it. And I know Michael disagrees. I'll let him back on the show next week. There was no chance or way to trade him right now, because the most important element of this was keeping your cap space free of retaining contract, meaning in the NHL, you only have 3 contracts that you can retain money from, and they've already used 2 of them, and you are not going to use one of those for $500,000 for Dante Fabbro. You're not going to do that. You need to make sure that if you need to trade a major piece at the deadline or acquire some piece, that you have space A to acquire them, or the ability to eat some salary of a piece that you may be getting rid of. You've got a more important piece that makes a more important move moving forward. So I don't think trading him today was an option. I think it was waivers, risk it on waivers or not. I think re-signing him at $2.5 million. I think that's the going rate for a defenseman of his caliber. For a 1-year deal, that's a very low risk, low proposition option there. I don't have any problem with that, frankly. The issue, I think, is not taking the deal at the deadline last year, if there was one to be had. We know that he was out there on the trading block. There probably was a pretty weak offer. Take the 7th rounder. Take the 6th rounder. It was not going to look good. It's going to look like you're giving him away, but it's better than where we are now. My issue with Dante Fabbro is the entire story. The entire Dante Fabbro saga, which is first-round pick, comes up from college, gets early playing time, plays for 3 different coaches, never gets better, plays over 300 games, and never gets to the point where he is an established top 4 blue line defenseman. That's his fault. That's the coaching staff's fault. That's the development team's fault. That's the general manager's fault. Everybody is to be blamed for this. To me, it is representative of David Poile's late career struggles at drafting key pieces in the top 2 rounds and developing them into bona fide starting pieces on the big club. And that is the thing that plagued David Poile at the end of his career as the general manager. And I think Fabbro is illustrative of that problem, in my opinion. And it's a bigger issue thing. The problem is that guy's now gone. We'll talk about the Hall of Famer, but he's still in the building a lot. So that's sort of where I'm at on this. I don't think any one individual decision was that bad around Fabbro. And I don't think the end result is all that bad around Fabbro. But I think he is indicative of the larger issue that David Poile had at the end of his tenure as general manager.
I think one thing I'll add to that's important, and I'm not trying to make excuses for the guy or anything. I just think it's important context here is that, yes, he was drafted first round pick, came right out of college, basically right into the playoffs, into the Stanley Cup playoffs. And it was like he didn't have any development time in the AHL. It was just a very different path from what players normally take in terms of development. And we'll never know now, but I have to wonder if some like real AHL time would have changed his trajectory, kind of developing and moving into, again, it's all a moot point now, but I think that that's important context to figure out. Like he is not your, typical development timeline for a player.
Yeah, no question. And we could ask his current head hockey coach, Dean Evison, about that. who was the head coach, I believe, in the AHL for Milwaukee when he was drafted and didn't go there for obvious reasons.
Full circle.
Obvious reasons. There you go. All right. So again, we can go through the list of this, and we did a little bit on the extra, but if you look at the picks that David Poile has made the last few years, in the draft. Let's see here. First round picks. 2016 was Fabbro, of course. 2017, Ellie Tolvanen. 2019, Tomasino. 2018, by the way, was traded for Ryan Hartman. So good use of a pick there. Yaroslav Askarov was 2020. So 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I know he drafted LaRue and Svechkov in 21. He drafted Kemmel in 22. That was his last 2 drafts. But those 5 drafts right there, Fabbro, Tolvanen, Tomasino, Hartman trade, and Askarov has netted them a grand total of like how many active games on the roster this year right now? Tomasino's played like how many games? Like 6? Something. I mean, that's how many games they've gotten out of those 5 first round picks in that stretch. I guess it was a couple for Fabbro as well. The second round pick, Sam Girard, traded. Mishmash, traded. Afanasiev, Evangelista, legitimate starting player. So in the first 2 rounds of those 5 drafts, they have 1 starting player on the team and a Tomasino. That's the problem that in my mind. It's not the Fabbro waiver stuff. That's the problem.
Yeah. It's hard because you think, I mean, I think part of it is the fact that this team for so long did not have a clear direction, where they were stuck in the middle. It wasn't like, it wasn't, we're going to tear it down and rebuild and tank for the draft, but it also wasn't, we're going to contend right now. So they did end up with a lot of these like middle towards the bottom, of the first round picks, which again, not an excuse. It's not like I just think that if that's where you're going to be picking constantly, you need to have a better strategy for like what you're going to get out of that, because it's a little bit, arguably harder than if you're picking at the top of the first round, then like who the best guys are. I don't know. I think that it's hard because I don't know. I just think you need to have a better strategy. I don't know what that strategy is. I won't pretend to know what it is, but I think that whatever it is, it's not working right now.
Well, and honestly, like this is why I think the end of the story is, and I'm not trying to belittle or diminish the feelings of the fans who are frustrated about this, or like, hey, we thought he was going to get through. I know a few of you in the comments are like, well, I think it's more about they thought they were going to get him through waivers. I actually don't think that's that big of a deal either. Like, it's a risk. It's a calculated risk. You're taking it, and you could lose him, and that's what it is. To me, it's like you can't that big issue that I feel like I believe is the issue, which is those 2 first rounds and those 5 drafts have netted largely nothing other than Luke Evangelista and Philip Tomasino. You can't put that on Trotz. So you have to separate it all and say part of the problem has been excised from the franchise because you all wanted him gone and he retired. Now he's in the Hall of Fame, by the way. And so that's happened. Now you have to look at Matthew Wood and Tanner Molendyke and, trading for Andrew Gibson, and like it's all that stuff now you got to look at. You've got to look at those.
Technically, Wood and Molendyke were still Trotz, or still Poile rather, but.
And Matthias Ekholm trade was a David Poile move too, you think?
Technically. I'm saying technically.
Look, I spoke to David Poile. Now we can transition. Sinkers Beverages, and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. 2 great local sponsors, 2 great companies owned by Nashvillians who live in Nashville, who love the Nashville Predators and the city of Nashville, and who win awards for the work they do for the community. So you all, when you are in town, please go support them. Buy your booze from Sinkers Beverages. Eat your meats from Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. It's not that complicated. They're great. They're great at both things, selling booze and meat, by the way. Go check them out. I talked to David Poile at the press conference, and I had a few minutes just one-on-one with him. And I said, look, how much have you been involved in the decision-making of all the things that had happened in that changeover, which was, there was a lot of gray area, right? Trotz, he announced he was stepping down. I think it was in February, right? Trotz had already been brought back the month before as like a consultant. He was working underneath. They were working basically hand in hand. And I was like, sure, David Poile, he basically told me I had to physically sign the cards, but he laughed about it. And he was like, but, I'm physically in the building signing the paperwork, but I'm not really doing the thing.
That's what I said. Technically. I mean,
I know. But I think ultimately, if you're trying to evaluate Barry Trotz in all of this, you have to look at what happens with the $2.5 million and with Fabbro. If he
Mhm.
goes on to be great, then it was a mistake, or Andrew Burnett wears a lot of that too. If he couldn't get the most out of him, that's on Burnett. I think Fabbro's had over 300 games to prove that he belongs in the starting lineup and hasn't done enough to solidify himself as a starting player. I think this is more on Fabbro. But if he goes on to be great, you can evaluate Trotz for making a mistake. And then from the draft standpoint, you can only look at the ones he's been involved in. So I don't like, we're sort of in this weird spot where it's like, it wasn't really his fault that Fabbro didn't work out. It's his fault that he got rid of him the way he did. But this is where we are. All right. You and Jeremy told a lot of great stories about David Poile and Jeremy Kagover. A lot of great stories about David Poile and Shea Weber over on It's All Your Fault podcast. I know you've got a good David Poile story that we're going to tell here in a second. I was around David enough to get to know him a little bit. The guy loves red wine, and he is one of the most quietly competitive human beings I've ever been around. Just like, he is very sort of soft-spoken and kind and respectful, but a guy that underneath that kind, respectful surface and facade is an extraordinarily competitive guy. So I know you're going to tell a story in a second. My only Shea Weber interaction was like one time, because I was hired to do the morning show like 3 months after he was traded for PK Subban. So I sort of only knew Shea Weber as a fan and as a season ticket holder. And then when I jumped onto the beat and got hired, PK Subban was already there. Shea Weber came back, and I had 1 2-minute conversation with him. And I think I got more. This is off the record. I think I got more words in a single answer out of Shea Weber asking about the Toronto Blue Jays than I have heard Shea Weber give in any answer to any reporter in the market for the decade that he had played here. That's all.
I mean, from everything I've heard about Shea, that and I guess he really liked to talk about fantasy football, so I've heard.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Anything but hockey. He would talk to you. He loves sports. He would talk to you about sports, but he would not, from what I understand, hockey wasn't the thing you wanted to talk about. But he'd light up like a Christmas tree. You start talking about the Toronto Blue Jays. So anyway, all right, you got some David Poile stuff for everybody, and I think people are going to want to hear this. So,
yeah, I mean, David, really, I will always consider it an honor to have worked with him for a very small part of, his career, because he retired during my time working for the Predators. But he, first of all, like, he's a guy who's so quiet, and like, I think that makes it easy for him to surprise you sometimes. I don't think I've ever met anyone who has a bigger sweet tooth than David Poile.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Chocolate and red wine.
Chocolate, everything. Like, he's like a little kid. Like, one time I remember I was walking down in the the locker room hallway, and I was holding a muffin, like a chocolate muffin that I had gotten it was like right after All-Star, and I had just come back from Florida, and I was holding so this is the first time David has seen me in like 2 weeks. And he's like, "Oh, where'd you get that?" It was like, "How was the trip?" But then was like, "Wait, that's chocolate. Where'd that come from?" And so, like,
I recognize. I mean, look, as a fellow sweet toother, I understand the distractions.
It was it's so fun. I've also don't know that I think I never would have expected to meet my equal in terms of my love of Dua Lipa in David Poile. David Poile, huge Dua Lipa fan.
Really?
Yes.
I don't think I knew that.
So like I said, the guy will surprise you in so many ways, but
he's a fascinating dude for sure.
He really is. And I have a lot of stories, but one that I will share because now, it reflects better on me, but I'm going to say that it was last year rookie tournament. We were in Florida, in Estero, Florida, and we were in the lobby of the hotel, like about to go to the game, and he said, he comes up to me and he's like, "So I'm trying to read," and at the time I wrote for NashvillePredators.com, and so, and he knew that obviously, and he's like, comes up to me, and it was like a very boomer thing. He's like, I obviously I read all of your stuff, but I want to read it on my phone. And I, in the least I tried to not be condescending and be like, you have an iPhone, and that's very possible. But he had heard that that NashvillePredators.com had an app, that the Preds had a team app. And so he wanted to read it that way. He wanted to read it that way and not like through the Safari browser or whatever. So he's like, how do I get this app? And I'm like, well,
wait a second. We have an app. We're the Preds. We have an app.
Well, you go to the app store
so
and you can download it. And he's like, okay, so how can I do that? It was like, he is
not reading our tweets.
He is a product. You'd be surprised about that.
Oh, he's got a guy. No, he's got a guy for that.
Well, he is very
job.
He's very tuned in, and he wants to read everything.
I know.
But he's like, I want to read on the app. I'm like, okay.
I want to read on the application.
Yes. And so I showed him the app store, and and it was just the classic boomer millennial interaction, because he was like, here, you just do it. He hands me his phone and I downloaded the app for him and programmed it in his favorites so that he could go look for it. And so now my claim to fame is that I really did it for him. I downloaded an app for a Hall of Famer, and I taught him something that day.
You can't just take the horse to water. You got to teach him to drink.
Yes.
Not just
listen.
You can't just go running around downloading Hall of Famers apps for him.
I tried.
How to use the app store.
I tried. Well, see, because once I downloaded it, I then needed to teach him where it was on his phone and how to find it. So
and how to move it to the front page.
Yes. So there was, some wisdom was imparted that day from me to a Hall of Famer. So
I think some comment. I can't remember. I wish I could remember who said this on the Lower Broad Hockey message board. I apologize, but I do think that David Poile is going to age very similarly to the Buffalo Bills Super Bowl run in the early '90s. Just bear with me on this. I think in the moment, as a kid watching football, and I'm assuming if we had social media and like sports talk radio that was in its heyday in the early '90s, there'd be a lot of this team sucks. Buffalo Bills, 4 straight losing trips to the Super Bowl. And what I've sort of my perspective of their performance over that time is coming back around to it as I'm now just like, what an extraordinary accomplishment to go to 4 straight Super Bowls. And I think that is how David Poile will be viewed. That people are going to be upset for a while about the things we just talked about, the draft picks, the degradation of the sort of farm system, or the coaching changes at the end after trial, like all the things that the Kyle Turris trade, like we can go down the list of things that fans were sort of frustrated by, Tolvanen notwithstanding. And I think what's going to happen is as we get further removed from the David Poile era, and this is where the comment from Lower Broad Hockey came in, is basically like, without David Poile, this franchise doesn't exist the way it is today. And so I think, I don't want to get romantic about it too soon, but I think at the end of the day, as time goes on, we will be more and more grateful for a good, honest, respectful man of integrity who did a largely awesome job for most of a very long career building and starting a franchise from scratch, and hired the right coach to be the first guy out of there, made some big moves in the early 2000s, some free agent signings and some trades, some draft picks there. Like, basically did a very good job, and it's why he's in the Hall of Fame. Is he the greatest? No, he never won a cup. He only went to one final. He's not one of the greatest GMs of all time, but he's a Hall of Famer, and he's one of the most important hockey people in Nashville, maybe ever. So I think that's going to age very well. But I understand fans being like, look at all those first round picks the last, those 5 years that he was drafting, and being upset with that. And that's okay. The trades, I think it's okay to be frustrated with how it ended. And also step back in a few years and be like, man, that was a pretty important dude. And he did it the right way. Like, he did it as a good guy, treating people well. There's a lot of GMs that are not as good as David Poile and not as good a person as David Poile. So
yeah. And just what he's done for the game of hockey. And that's really what the Hockey Hall of Fame should be celebrating, and yes, I understand he didn't win a cup, and I'm sure that eats at him more than it eats at any of you. But I think that it's, he really did make this team his life's work. Like, he poured everything into this. So you could just tell how much he cared. Cared about people, like cared about all the people that worked for him, worked under him. And really just, it was not, not winning a cup, not for lack of trying or not for lack of investment or care on David Poile's part.
Both Poile and Weber will be back, I believe, at Bridgestone Arena November 23rd for the game that night. And so that should be very interesting. It should be a lot of fun for the fans to go out and see him. And you know what? David Poile just continues to be one of the most gracious and kind people, making sure that Minnesota and the Rangers have really good teams this year. So there you go. All right. Last but not least here, Diamond Sports Group. By the way, Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue are two examples of great businesses. Diamond Sports Group, their final hearing on bankruptcy is this Thursday. The report from last year was that they are $8.7 billion in debt, a.k.a. not good businesses. They have now launched single game pricing on the Diamond Sports, I guess it's FanDuel Sports Network app. $6.99. You now, Predators fans, have the good fortune of being able to fork over to a company going through bankruptcy. $7 for a single game of hockey. GTFOH, what are you talking about? This is the most disgustingly transparent money grab I've ever seen from a flailing company in the media world. And I know that's saying a lot considering the media landscape these days. Oh my God. 3 games. It would cost you more to watch 3 individual games a month than just buying the package. I've already done the package thing, and I've already talked about how frustrating it is to have to rewatch things and click the button 100 times to get to the second period. It's so stupid. It's a terrible app, but it's how I have to watch my games. $6.99 for a game, Emma? What are we doing? What are we just the CEO just needs to ask for money. Hey, will you donate money to my GoFundMe? What are we doing?
Well, and I'm curious it still wouldn't be worth it, just to be clear. But if you pay $6.99 for one game, do you get the game? Like, do you get to watch it back if you want to? Or is it just like you watch it live and that's it?
It needs to buy me a bottle of whiskey at $6.99.
I mean,
I need to be able to watch it back again, and it needs to buy me something.
I agree. It still would not be worth it, but that was just a general question I had. Yeah,
I have no idea. I assume no, because that would be smart and it would make sense.
You click on the button to purchase the game, and it takes you straight to the CEO's Venmo. Here you go.
Yeah, here's $6.99. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Get GTFOH.
It's dumb. It's really dumb.
It's offensive to me as a fan. It's offensive to me as somebody in media. It's offensive to me as someone who has to manage my money. All of it's just offensive to me. I am a triggered, sensitive snowflake.
At that point, why wouldn't, again, like you said, at that point, just buy the damn package for a month? Maybe they're hoping this is some weird psychological manipulation that they're hoping people will have that very thought and then go buy the subscription. I don't know.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is if you're a season ticket holder and you go to almost every game at home, and then you get a bunch of games on ESPN or TNT or whatever, and then you're just hey, I missed that one. But I don't even know how you get to I don't know how the math does it. Yes, Josh says the math doesn't math. There's not a scenario in which you only need a game. I can't think of any, because again, even if you have 42 games worth of tickets or 41 games worth of tickets, what about the other 41?
Yeah,
I don't understand.
I was gonna say, respectfully, if you have the money to be a season ticket holder, then
you can spend the $18 a month.
Correct.
GTFOH. God, absurd.
It's such a clear
please give us money, we need it.
We have no money, everyone panic. Right. That's the message that sends.
Oh, it's so transparently bad. Oh, I hate it so much. And if you want to know where this is all going for the Predators and for you fans, go read Lower Broad Hockey. My piece is still up there about Valley sports in the future. Everything in it's been right so far. I feel pretty comfortable about the reporting in that story. So my instincts are still that this team will have a different distribution model at the start of next season. But that's my informed speculation. but that's not official. I'm not reporting that. That is my speculation. So we shall see. Ben agrees. Yes, that's gross. That's gross. I'm very glad I live out of Market now. My dad has been a fan forever and can't watch the games now, and I have to tell him what went down the day after. What a shit show. No notes. No notes. At Emma_Lingan and on Hockey News and It's All Your Fault podcast. Tell everybody where they can find you.
All of those places.
Okay. Cool.
Just
on Blue Sky? You gonna get
not
on Blue Sky?
on Blue Sky.
Come on over, dude.
Don't you need like an invitation or something? No,
I've got 5, but I don't think you need them anymore. Come on over.
Okay.
If you're a Preds fan, you want to come on over and hang out. And look, you're going to get some weird stuff from me. It's like college football and news and politics. It's not just going to be sports. I want to actually be a person. Okay.
Yeah.
On Blue Sky. But it is so nice. Everyone's just nice to each other. The Nazi porn bar has not invaded yet, and they've got their own spot now. And
you'll
there.
Probably get pictures of my dog and random tweets about Wake Forest football.
Great.
So.
It's great. You get to be yourself. I don't have to be a reporter. I can just be me. So if you want to come over there and hang out with us, I'll be skeeting away on Blue Ski. Come on over to Blue Sky and hang out with us. For Emma, I am Braden. Thanks to all of you guys for hanging out and listening. Please go subscribe to Lower Broad Hockey. And of course, shop at Sinker's Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue for all your Thanksgiving needs. Mike's back next week. Thank you guys for listening and hanging out. Rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. We will talk to you guys next time.